back to the beat. There is a lot going on, and I turn to a different big story with a straightforward question. How serious is this federal sex trafficking probe involving Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz? Well, here's one big indicator. The feds have his iPhone. It's no small matter for the Justice Department to seize the phone of an elected member of a co-equal branch of government. Politico now reporting that's what they've done, and dating it all the way back to the winter with reports that the Trump-friendly congressman was telling people about it himself. Gaetz has denied all wrongdoing. Reports are that agents also seized the phone of one of his former girlfriends and are probing his 2018 trip to the Bahamas, which included a young woman who is, quote, key to the investigation, who was 18 at the time of that trip. Meanwhile, there may be new heat on Gaetz, given indications that his indicted ally is cooperating with investigators and accusing Gaetz of offering, quote, cash or gifts in exchange for sex. We are joined now by Mark Caputo, senior reporter for Politico, who broke this very story about the feds getting Gaetz' cell phone, and Joan Walsh, a keen observer of politics, a friend of ours and national affairs correspondent for The Nation. Mark, what did you find in your reporting?
Well, what you said, we also had more details on the Bahamas trip, kind of who went along. There were two private planes, a commercial plane, Matt Gaetz apparently flew commercial, and there were at least 5 women who went along on the trip. One of the women who went on the trip, spoke to, said there was no prostitution that happened. That's what investigators are investigating in relation to the Bahamas trip, from what we understand. And she also said that everyone was 18 or over. That has particular salience in the case of this teen who is the alleged victim of sex trafficking by Gaetz' ally and let's just probably say former friend, Joel Greenberg, the local Florida County tax collector, who was charged with that back in July or back in August. Yes, July, pardon me. The dates are kind of mushing around in my head. So that's kind of the big 10,000-foot view of what we were able to uncover. But the phones thing was a particular salience.
Yeah, it's a big problem for Matt Gaetz if the feds got his phone and that went in to get cleared, obviously, through a judge, that kind of surveillance. Mark, this story has really accelerated with the reporting of the New York Times and your reporting in Politico. I don't know if you'll answer this question, but I'm going to ask it. Does your reporting reflect that Matt Gaetz may have a legal criminal problem? Or does your reporting at this point reflect a lot of stuff around him that the feds are looking at, but that he may not be in things that are chargeable?
Well, I'm going to dodge this a bit. It depends on how you define problem, right? I mean, when the federal government is seizing your phone, you got a problem. When your allies are saying, hey, yeah, maybe he had sex with her, but it was when she was 18 and a half. You know, when you're measuring people's ages in fractions, you got a problem. Now, is he going to be indicted? That's a whole other matter. That the teen or the former teen who's now 21, question is, what has she said to the federal government, if anything, and what evidence is there that she can back up or shed more light on? And then obviously there's the Joel Greenberg matter, but he might have some problems as a witness against Gaetz. Specifically, this is a guy who, according to the indictment, not only had sex with a 17-year-old, but falsely smeared her as a pedophile. Is that the kind of guy you want as a star witness in your case against another guy who's accused of having sex with a minor? Attention.
Joan, take a listen to Republican Steve Scalise on all of this.
You know, we've heard a lot of stories. I mean, obviously I've read the media reports, but there's been nothing that we've seen yet from the Department of Justice. If something's going on, obviously we'll find out about it. You know, right now it's hard to speculate on rumors, but, you know, if something really formal happened from Justice, we would, of course, react and take action.
Joan?
Well, seizing his phone is a little bit formal. I mean, that's really, as Mark said, never a good sign. And you know, I do get the problems with Greenberg as a star witness against Gaetz, but it's still very intriguing that what the Times reported, that he is cooperating. And his lawyer had a weird comment in the Times story, something like, I'm sure Matt Gaetz is not going to be very comfortable today. So that was a little bit of a shot across the bow. No real idea what it means. It's really not legal terminology. But it's not like they're clearly sticking together. And there are a lot of people involved with this. So, you know, there are a lot of witnesses, frankly, and I think we're going to learn a lot more.
And Joan, what do you think of something we've touched on, which is that Matt Gaetz rose to prominence chiefly through Fox News and being a very loud Donald Trump supporter, and he's not getting much quarter or help from either of those parts of the right-wing movement right now?
No, not Fox, not Trump, and not Ron DeSantis, who he was very close to during DeSantis' campaigns. He won't talk about him either. Kevin McCarthy won't talk about him. So, you know, a lot of former allies are not there for him. And that, to me, is another, again, you know, we have to consider him innocent. These are tea leaves. These are not legal facts. But when your friends start, you know, not commenting on you, Donald Trump wouldn't even see him. People are hearing bad things. People are hearing more things than I'm hearing. So, you know, I don't think it looks good for him. But that's probably a little bit of wishful thinking because, you know, I like to believe in karma, and his shouldn't be good.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, we every time we report the case, we're very clear about he's denied all allegations. He hasn't been indicted with anything. As to the point you raised about Trump won't even talk to him, I mean, let's be clear, Joan. It's not like Trump's busy.
No, he's not. I mean, you know, I could probably go see him.
He could take a meeting in Florida.
Sure. So why he couldn't find time for poor Matt, I don't know. But it's not good. It's not a good thing.
Mark?
Important to point out that a number of people in Trump's orbit have on the record denied that. I don't want to throw shade on the reporter or the report, but I think we have to remember this about a lot of the people who surrounded the president, both in the White House, or the former president, Donald Trump, in the White House, in his campaign were vipers. In fact, there was even a book called like Team of Vipers, written by one of the staffers about how they all stab each other in the back. And Matt Gaetz has Donald Trump's cell phone. Donald Trump takes Matt Gaetz's call. When Matt Gaetz wanted to have a pardon for Roger Stone, he went over the heads of the White House staff and he talked to the president directly about it. Matt Gaetz is not going to White House staff, former White House staff, and Trump staff to get an appointment with Donald Trump. If he wants an appointment with Donald Trump, he'll call him up, and if Trump wants to see him, he'll take it. So I find it doubtful that Gaetz had asked the White House staff for these pardons, considering that dynamic. And also, I find it doubtful he went to the Mar-a-Lago staff, or whatever you called it, and said, hey, you people who hate me, can you help me go see the president? Don't get me wrong, like, I think Gaetz realizes that he's a bit toxic right now. And so he's not going to go to the
briefly,
president,
Mark,
hey, that's for me, you know?
I mean, briefly, Mark, it sounds like, shade or not, it sounds like you are questioning the premise of some of those reports that put their stock, including the New York Times, on the pardons in staff-level conversations, because you're saying in your reporting that's not the nature of the relationship between these two individuals?
I think a better way to say it is I'm gravely doubting the honesty of the anonymous sources with people who hate Matt Gaetz. I'm not saying they don't have a reason to hate Matt, but as we've seen over the years, a lot of the people who surround the president lie.
But the president does have access, no longer to Twitter. But,
go ahead, Joe.
You know, he can put out a statement. He did put out a statement around the pardon story. It was not particularly warm. He's not issuing statements to talk about what a raw deal his buddy Matt Gaetz is getting. You know, you have better sources than I do, Mark, so I defer to you on that. I still think, you know,
I appreciate, I appreciate the nuance, and I think you're both gesturing at the fact that both things can be true. There could be a bunch of liars issuing lying anonymous quotes that create stories, quote unquote, and there could also be Donald Trump icing out Matt Gaetz. Briefly, Mark, and then I got to go.
Yeah, well, I just think that, just remember this, is a lot of behavior that a lot of people have described as creepy has come out about Matt Gaetz. This is still a developing story, and so there's not going to be a lot of rush for people to surround this when it's a developing story. Just like we're very careful about saying, look, these are just allegations, but a lot of these people are like, okay, what other allegations? So that's one of the reasons you're seeing them be cool.
Well, it's...
Right.
Yeah, it's a doozy. The feds have the phone. And we'll keep tracking it. Mark and Joan, thanks to both of you. Fitting in a break, we have Minnesota Officer Kim Potter indicted for manslaughter today. As we've covered, it's an unusually swift charge for an officer in a deadly police incident. It comes amidst ongoing protests and a vigil tonight over the killing of Daunte Wright. His family now represented by attorney Ben Crump, who also represents George Floyd's family and joins us momentarily to discuss that case as well. Just about 10 miles away from the Wright incident, lawyers for former Officer Chauvin were trying to poke holes and add doubt to the prosecution's murder case, which has argued that what you see is what happened, that Chauvin's knee slowly killed Floyd. While defense witnesses have been arguing that what really happened was not as visible in that video, but was within Floyd's body. They argue that he died because of other factors, including heart disease and drugs.
In my opinion, Mr. Floyd had a sudden cardiac arrhythmia due to his atherosclerotic and hypertensive heart disease, or you can write that down multiple different ways. During his restraint and subdual by the police, or restraint by the police. And then his significant contributory conditions would be, since I've already put the heart disease in part 1, he would have the toxicology, the fentanyl and methamphetamine.
Civil rights attorney Ben Crump, representing the Floyd family, joins me now. I know these are busy and also difficult times for you and your clients. Thank you for making time for us tonight, sir.
Thank you for having me, Ari.
Yes, sir. We've been covering the trial many days. We went voluminously through the prosecution case. We are now sequentially in the defense side, as people know. Your response to some of what we just heard there from the defense witness?
It's a desperate attempt to try to distract us from what we saw in that video, Ari. The fact that I believe at one point they said the car exhaust was what killed George Floyd. All this is something to try to make us look away and not focus on what happened in that video. And that video makes it clear what killed George Floyd was an overdose of excessive force by Officer Derek Chauvin's knee being on his neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds.
The other thing that's come up is different video, and this may be less familiar to some viewers. Again, I always mention to folks, you want to understand the full trial, you got to see the full trial on both sides of the evidence. This is a 2019 video of Mr. Floyd, so not from that fateful day. I want to play it. This is the first time we're playing it on the beat, and get your response as a Floyd family representative to how the defense has been using this. Let's take a look. Now, Mr. Crump, the defense is using this. The court has ruled it admissible, meaning whether people agree or not, it's been deemed admissible and relevant to some degree, although it's not from the day of the incident. Your response to the way the defense was presenting this video evidence to the jury?
I think it's completely irrelevant. They are still trying to explain away why Derek Chauvin didn't give any consideration, any professionalism, or any humanity to George Floyd as he was face down, unrestrained, and handcuffed. To say that he resisted years ago, which I don't see resistance there, the White House insurrection on January 6, 2021, that was resisting law-abiding authority. I think George Floyd in all times acted in a way that was commiserate with a person who did not feel that he should be arrested, but in no way posed a threat of violence in any way to the officers, especially, Ari, when they get him face down, that he assisted in going to the ground. You look at the entire video of George Floyd, you will see he was very compliant with the law enforcement. He just did not want to get put in the back of the police car because of his size and that he was claustrophobic. And there's one point in the video where he asked, could you bring a bigger vehicle?
Mr. Crump, the other thing I wanted to ask you about, and I think viewers know because I mentioned it in our broadcast, you do this work. You've been doing it for a long time. The civil rights work, sometimes there aren't videos. Sometimes there's not national media attention. Sometimes there aren't big famous people involved. You've been doing this work for so long, and it's not our job here to prejudge what will happen in the Daunte Wright killing and in the Potter indictment, and we'll cover those trials too. But seeing what you said earlier today, what are your reflections here about what may be, albeit tragic, what you put as a change in at least the process, the speed of the justice system in some of these cases? Your reflections tonight.
Yeah, it was profound. I was at Reverend Al's National Action Network convention having a panel with the mothers of the movement. That been Trayvon's mother, Michael Brown's mother from Ferguson, Eric Garner's mother from here in New York, and Stephon Clark's mother, who was killed in the backyard of his grandmother's house in Sacramento. And we found the news that the officer was going to be charged in the killing of Daunte Wright. And it was profound because when you really think about it, Ori, it was the blood of their children who helped us get to this point in America, because none of them got due process. Trayvon was the only one who had his killer arrested and had to come to face the evidence in court, in the court of law. These other mothers never got their day in court. So I want to believe in my heart that we're starting to progress now, because we saw in George Floyd, the officers were charged within a week. Now we see in Daunte Wright, the officers are charged in a week. Hopefully we can get to that point where we have equal justice under the law, where marginalized minorities who are killed by police can get equal justice as our white brothers and sisters.
Yeah, understood. And we're living through history, and you've obviously been leading the charge through some of this history, along with, as you mentioned, those clients of yours who are human beings, who lost other human beings, lost their family members. Nothing brings them back. And as you say, whether finally the justice system addresses any of that. So Ben Crump, on more than one story tonight, thank you for your time, sir.
Hey, thank you, brother. I really appreciate you covering these matters.
Georgia's crackdown on voting rights is proving costly to the state, which lost millions in revenue with the Major League pulling the All-Star game. Now, hundreds of CEOs with a formal push against these kind of crackdowns on voting. Heavy hitters, including Amazon, Starbucks, General Motors involved, including, as well, Warren Buffett, one of the richest people in the world. Now, Georgia's Republican Governor Kemp is defiant. While the law restricts how people could even get food and water in line to vote, Kemp is making the rounds, defending himself, and going ahead and agreeing with a conservative pundit who argued, well, it's all okay because people could pack or order food.
People can bring their own water, their own food. That's accurate, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They can order a pizza. They can order Grubhub or Uber Eats.
Grubhub or Uber Eats. They're your friend when your state's trying to suppress, well, your right to vote. Now, many Republican politicians, I should say, have actually been caught off guard by how many of these kind of corporations are lining up against these measures. Mitch McConnell and Ted Cruz have been deriding the woke corporations, but it seems clear, and I want to tell you what's happening here. The issue is not that corporations are just suddenly going far left. They remain pretty capitalistic, conservative forces in American life. The issue is the Republican Party becoming so extreme on issues of voting and human rights that even Wall Street just wants no part of it. We turn now to New York Times columnist Michelle Goldberg. Welcome. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. I want to dig into this piece of it. Ted Cruz was also complaining about this. Take a listen.
We have seen the rise of the woke corporation. These woke corporations have decided to become the political enforcer for Democrats in Washington. Major League Baseball should have to play by the same rules, and if they're going to play partisan enforcer, they shouldn't expect to see special goodies from Washington.
Michelle?
Well, what's so telling about that is the implication is that if they don't stand up for voting rights, then they do deserve special goodies from Washington. You don't see among the critics of quote-unquote woke corporations any real attempt to reign in corporate power. None of them are signing on to the Biden administration's attempt to raise corporate taxes to pay for infrastructure. It's all about punishing specific corporations that they feel like are doing Republican bidding, even though the idea that corporations have free speech is something that Ted Cruz and other Republicans have pontificated on endlessly in other contexts.
Yeah, that's sort of been their thing. And a debate over, say, a national voter holiday, would that be more fair, or other big picture ideas seems quite distinct from what so many of these companies say they don't even want to be anywhere near, which is a view in a country like America that has had such discriminatory history, voting by gender, crackdowns on race, that have a state like Georgia get away with this.
Well, look, what's going on now is such an ugly attempt to subvert democracy, to instantiate minority rule in this country in a way that will make it very, very hard going forward for the majority to ever again be able to express its political preferences. And so I think that you can't get past two things. First, I think it's very important that this whole initiative was organized and led by Black executives who, and I think it's something that shows why it's so important that you have diversity at the highest level in corporations, even though people on the left can sometimes be a little bit cynical about the idea that we need a more diverse class of millionaires as opposed to, kind of social justice for I think that it shows why that's important. And it also shows that, again, our political system is not necessarily responsive to the majority of voters. And if Republicans have their way, it will be less and less responsive to the majority of voters. But corporations are. Yeah. Corporations need, young people, people in cities, all the people that Republicans seek to disempower.
Yeah, and they need to have some baseline where they don't seem like they're looking the other way for things that are clearly anti-human rights, which is different than other partisan debates, whatever they may be. Always good to see you, Michelle. Thank you. I'm fitting in a break because we want to get